Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 273 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast. There's a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me, oh, she's amazing. I'm so lucky to have her for so many reasons. We will see. This is a good show, and it's partially the fault of the lovely, the wonderful Erin Paulette. How you doing, Erin?
It's certainly been a week, hasn't it?
It has been a week.
I mean, it hasn't been awful for me personally, but yeah, things are dramatic and spicy all over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you will see, I mean, we're not going to have much of a banter on the show because we got interviews.
Mm-hmm. But
yes,
I am contractually obligated to ask, how are you doing, Weer'd?
I am tired. I've been running around like crazy and probably not sleeping as much as I can because I have been following the news and like speaking late in the night with Ryan Machad because he was up in Maine for this horrible shooting that was going on in Maine and just getting details and things like that. And so it's been and I've just letting stuff pile up on my recorder. I gotta edit like a ton of podcasts. I got a lot of them done, but either way, it's been a busy week for me. Mostly me doing stuff in preps for the show. How about you, Erin?
Wow. My mind just actually went blank for a moment. My week has been busy taking Mom to various doctor's appointments. Just checking up on her in the wake of her STEMI, and she's doing well. And we finally got her an appointment with a pain doctor to help with that pinched nerve that was causing her such pain, and she got an injection or two in her arm, and that really helps. So we are slowly, mayhap glacially returning to normal, but it does seem like we are trending that way. Possibly just in time for World War III, but who knows?
Yeah, definitely the pain clinics can be your absolute friend. My grandmother, in the last few years of her life, she had very, very bad osteoporosis, and in the end, it was giving her a lot of pain. And she got worked over by some pain doctors, and they did some really, really good things for her, and really kept her as comfortable as she could be. Again, as a 90-some-year-old lady with severe emphysema, slowly circling the drain. But she
keep it light.
I mean, she was just. My grandmother lived into her early 90s, and she was a heavy smoker and drinker. It's one of those like, okay, and like in the end, like she was just one of those like, I'm ready to go. And her body was like, yeah, no, we're still fine. Why? I've been doing everything I can to kill you. My husband died of lung cancer like 40 years ago. Yeah, no, it was, she lived quite a life, and she was an amazing lady. But but again, pain clinics. It's anyone you know is experiencing like chronic pain. Try to find yourself a pain specialist because they know voodoo that your regular primary care physician might not know. But as I think if you don't mind, Erin, I think we can dispense with the pleasantries and just dive straight into the segments.
I mean, I thought that's what you were going to do, and then you asked me how I was doing, and that's one of the reasons why I seg-faulted there.
Yeah, well, I wanted to know how you're doing, and I'm glad to hear your mom's doing great. But yeah, Here we go. I mentioned the mass shooting in Lewiston, Maine, and you've likely heard the national news. This has been quite the national news story. It's always kind of interesting, actually, hearing national news stories coming out of my home state of Maine. But in the time from the shooting to the time when they've actually found the body of the killer, my number one news source was my friend Ryan Machad from Handgun Radio, because it's local news and he was hearing everything first. So I thought there would be no better person to talk to about this than Ryan. I believe this is his absolute first appearance on the Assorted Calibers podcast. Ryan Machad, you've heard him from Handgun Radio with myself, where I am just the co-host and the producer. And you've been on at least one ACP film track. Is that right, Ryan?
If I've probably been on more than, well, I think I've been on one ACP film track. I'm sure I've been on plenty of the blooper reels. You've
been on plenty of the blooper reels. So for those that are Patreon patrons, you've heard Ryan multiple times. For those who listen to Handgun Radio, you've heard from Ryan. And I wish I could have you on for a happier subject matter, but this is really kind of, you're the perfect guy, the first person, the man I've been talking to about this event. But as we all know, Ryan lives in Central Maine, and there has been a horrible event that has happened in Central Maine, and you've really been kind of in ground zero on that. So why don't you just start talking about your experience with this, Ryan?
So, as Weer'd said, we had a horrific mass shooting up here in Central Maine, and the one thing that I keep hearing is we never thought this could happen here. I was honestly kind of surprised it hadn't happened here. It happens all around the country. And so it happened in Lewiston, Maine. So from where I live to Lewiston is about 50 miles. I'm pretty familiar with the area. And it's a very close-knit area. It's also an area that is not a place that a lot of people in Maine like to go, to be honest with you. It's got a lot of crime, a lot of shootings, but nothing on this scale. You'll hear in the newspaper there's been a shooting in the park or whatever, and it's one or two people shooting at each other and gangbangers and stuff. But so this week in Lewiston, it was the deadliest of the year. 18 people were killed in the attacks in a local bowling alley and a bar, and 13 others were injured. It happened on a youth night. It was a youth bowling team. The asshole, I'm not going to say his name, he's 40 years old, and he was found dead of a self-correcting gunshot wound. The entire area has been basically on lockdown. They canceled school for my kids, and like I said, we're 50 miles north of it, and their school was canceled, and I was happy about that. We'll get into that after, why I was happy about them canceling school.
I'll also just for my angle on it. I mean, I'm from the Portland area, so I'm. How far am I from Lewiston? I'm like 50 miles from Lewiston, I think it is.
You're roughly, it's roughly half, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm about 50 miles from Lewiston, and I grew up in South Portland, and all the schools in Southern Maine were also closed. USM was completely closed. The UMaine campus. I think all the UMaine campuses. I don't know about. I looked up UMaine Presque Isle because that's one of the furthest north campuses. It did. A lot of the closures didn't go super far north, but
Orono
can't and Machias did as well. So I'm not sure what else, but essentially, they shut down like the bulk of the state. Like it went all the way down to Portland.
We'll get into why they did that and why it was a good idea.
I mean, absolutely.
But I want to just read off the names of the victims here. Michael Delorier, 51. He was killed at the bowling alley while trying to rush the gunman, according to his father. I believe he was the head of the Sabatis Historical Society. His dad was. But yeah, he was trying to rush the gunman, and he was killed. Jason Walker, also a close friend of Delorier, was killed at the bowling alley at the same time. They both made sure their wives and several young children were under the cover, and then they charged the shooter. Peyton Brewer Ross worked as a pipe fitter at Bath Iron Works. He loved cornhole, and he was playing a cornhole tournament at the bar. Tricia Salen was an accomplished athlete, volunteer, and on the day of her death, a hero. She was calling 911 at the Just-in-Time Recreation Center when she was shot. Robert Violet and Lucille Violet, 76 and 73 years old, respectively. They were coaching a youth bowling league. They were both covering the children that they were teaching at the youth bowling league. Bill Young and Aaron Young. Bill was 44 and Aaron was 14, and they were father and son, both at the bowling alley, and they were both unfortunately killed. Ron Morin, 55. Joshua Seal. He was one. If you're from Maine, he would be the person who you would see next to Dr. Neerav Shah during the COVID crisis, doing translation for ASL. During his Dr. Shah's speeches, he was one of the ones doing that, and he was there and was killed, unfortunately. Arthur Strout, 42 years old. Stephen Vazella, 45 years old. Thomas Conrad, he was, I believe, he was a manager, so he attempted to take him down at the bowling alley, and he was shot when he was trying to do that. Brian McFarlane, 40 years old. Joseph Walker, 57. Joseph Walker was the son of the city councilor. Leroy Walker is his father. He's a city councilor in Auburn. And it says here, he was told he picked up a butcher knife and went after the gunman to try to stop him from killing other people, and that's when they shot him. William Brackett, 48, avid sports fan with natural athletic ability, according to close friends and family. Keith McNair, 64. Yeah. Tough. It's tough to see.
That's tough. I mean, I got to say, two observations that I've made, and I have not heard anything to say why these observations may have happened the way they did, whether it's happenstance or it was intentional. But first up, I got to say, a lot of stories. I mean, you've actually told more, but the news has been really good about reporting the story of heroism that happened that day, of people getting people to safety, people, trying to rush the gunman and things like that. And that's really, that's good to hear. It's unfortunate that none of them were successful, but we have seen many, many instances where mass shootings have been stopped by people who, even if they were unarmed, either by choice or by law or policy, that in fact they acted as best as they could. They fought back, because that is absolutely the best response that you can have for a situation like this, is to fight back. The two other things, though, is number one, there was only one female victim and there was only one minor.
There were two. I think two females.
Oh, were there two females? Okay.
I think one at the bowling alley and one at the bar.
Okay, so there was only two female victims and only one minor child. And that was, especially since it was, when I heard that it was youth night at the bowling alley, I was, visions.
I was dreading that press conference.
I was having visions of Sandy Hook, or Uvalde, where it was just going to be stacks of kids. So I don't know if the gunman was avoiding women and kids, and the ones that were killed just were happenstance, or if it was just pure luck. But either way, I thank whatever forces that were going through that the women and kids were spared.
First of all, let me talk about this guy real quick, and then I'll say what I was going to say. Mm-hmm. This guy, I apologize if I pronounce his name incorrectly. Thomas Ghiberti. He was the manager one of the managers or staff members at Just in Time Recreation. It used to be Spare Time, but there's a Spare Time in Augusta too. He risked his life leading countless kids to safety. I think he got like at least 6 or 7 of them down to the pin setting area. While under fire from the gunman, he got shot like 4 times in one leg and once in the other leg, and he is currently in good condition in the hospital down in Portland. He's had surgery. He's all set. He's in stable condition, and he has reached out and said that he appreciates all the stuff he's gotten. But this man's a hero. He took all those kids and got them, took as many as he could, and got them to where they needed to be.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And again, this is exactly the response that you need to do in the event that you find out that you're in this situation. You shouldn't be thinking this can't happen here. This isn't happening to me. It's all right, what are the best tools that I have, and what can I do to make the most impact in this horrible moment?
So the other thing I was going to say, people were wondering why the identification took so long. Sorry. So I read this on CNN, which whatever, you can think CNN, whatever, but they said that someone reported that the identification took so long because most of the shots were headshots. And apparently the rifle was a 308 Ruger SF-AR, and I guess the victims were so disfigured that they couldn't identify them because of that. That is tough to even think about, but it is the reality.
Yeah, that is tough to hear about. So yeah, and these 2 locations, they weren't close together. They weren't like across the street from each other.
4 miles away. So I know Lewiston well. The armory where they were doing the reunification center. I've been there for gun shows probably 5 or 6 times. I've worked the table with my buddy John. I've never actually gone to these places, but like I will tell you, anytime I go to Lewiston, I carry a gun. Well, I carry a gun pretty much all the time, but it's tough. The good part was, did you hear the news story when the press conference from Saucechuck about the 2 cops who were at the range right next to the bowling alley?
I did hear about that.
Yeah, they got there within a minute and a half.
Man,
there were 2 Lewiston cops shooting at the qualifying or practicing or whatever at the Lewiston range, and they got the call. They heard the call, and they weren't even uniformed. They were off duty. And they were the first ones who got there. And they just went in and started clearing. That's the thing. Get in there and get to work. That's what stopped. Unfortunately, the guy was gone by that point, but they didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
But get in there and get to work.
Yeah, that is amazing, because also, yeah, they it sounded like I thought from the press conference the state police captain said that they were shooting the qualifier, but that's not important. But he did note that they were in plain clothes, which also means that they weren't wearing armor. I don't know if they had armor in the car or all that. No armor was mentioned, but the idea of going in possibly with just handguns and possibly without any body armor, into that sort of situation, that is an extra level of bravery. It's one thing whenever we see cops charge in after a spree killing and clearing a room and all that they will have, it's bravery to go through. We saw the badge cam videos from the cops in Nashville, and like, oh God, just my heart was racing watching that, even though I knew how it ended, seeing them clear the stairwells and take those hallways. Those spaces can be just funnels of death, and they just charged in. And yeah, they had rifles and they had full armor on and all that, but then to do it essentially in your street clothes with what you've got on you, that is an extra level of bravery right there.
No, that's incredible. I had somebody ask me yesterday about, because you can't imagine how many people I have had ask me about, can you teach me how to shoot? And I'm like, I'm not an instructor. I'm not licensed. Like, I can teach you, but you're not going to get a certificate or anything. I had a bunch of people ask, like, could you pull the trigger on somebody? And I'm like, are you kidding? I get it. I understand there are some people who can't fathom taking a life, right? But in this instance, like I was talking to Sarah, I said I couldn't live with myself knowing that I had the capability, maybe, to stop it, and I just ran. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but like when I carried yesterday, you saw what I carried. I carried my Glock 19 when we went out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, the guy had been caught, but I'm concerned about copycats. But I had my Glock 19. I had my J-frame in my pocket, and before we left, I looked at Sarah. I said, "I want you to do the manual of arms on the J-frame and just kind of refamiliarize yourself with it." She knows how to use it, but I said, if something goes down, I'm going to toss you the J-frame. I'm going to be like, get the kids out of here. Get out the closest exit door. And if anybody gets in your way who is a threat, you have 5 shots.
Mm-hmm.
And don't worry about me. I'll get out. But I couldn't just run and not try to do something.
Yeah.
I couldn't live with myself.
And the idea of having that having that spare gun that you could hand to someone who knows how to use it. I mentioned to you actually when I went and saw when I saw The Dark Knight in the theaters. Obviously, it was after the event in Aurora, and same idea. I was concerned about copycats. And so I specifically, I went with a friend of mine and my wife, and they were all, and everyone there knew how to shoot, and I had 3 guns on me, and it was in the event that stuff goes bad, I'm handing out guns as needed, so that we are now Legion. So it's not a bad course of action. Another thing to go on is we never thought this could happen here. Well, yeah, I mean, it happens everywhere. It can happen here. It happens in other countries. But also, as far as pulling the trigger on somebody, one thing that I watch, it drives my wife nuts because it bothers her, and I understand why, is I watch police interrogation videos where they're talking to the people after they've caught them and getting them to confess to their crimes. And I watch it because you hear what these very, very horrible people are doing and saying and how they're justifying what they did. And part of it is just to realize that there is just pure evil out there. And there are people that are so broken that these horrible things that they'll just do, but also so that you can kind of start seeing patterns. And so in the event that you're around, that you'll get things going. Like I remember I was actually talking about this very thing with my wife, saying, "Hey, do you remember that time that we were headed back from the aquarium? We're at North Station. We're waiting for our train. And I looked over at her. I made sure my daughter was near us. And I said to her, there's a junkie walking around panhandling. When he comes up to us, I'll do all the talking." And again, I'm not saying that a junkie is always a dangerous threat, and this guy was perfectly peaceful, but he was definitely someone who, if he didn't have a substance abuse problem, boy, he really needs to work on his life because he sure looks like he did. And he was asking people for money, and essentially I just hustled him on his way. But you never know. And so it's a good idea but I spotted him from a long way off, and that's a good helper. But yeah, we're getting off track on this, but yeah, so let's talk about the aftermath. So the cops arrived on the scene, but he was already gone and he disappeared. Where did he head off to?
He went to the second location. So this is the other thing. This guy planned this. And I don't know if anybody knows, I have a degree in psychology from UW Maine, and I don't actually use it, which is unfortunate, but I got to use it for this situation. Everybody was talking about, oh, well, he does this. This is a statistical anomaly in terms of mass shooters. This guy Number one, he did it 2 locations, which, okay, that does happen sometimes. But he also didn't die at the second location, because statistically, they usually die. They either kill themselves or they're shot by the cops. And this guy didn't. And there was a massive manhunt for him for almost 48 hours. They found his car at a boat launch about 5 to 6 miles away from the second location. So when I heard that, everybody I talked to when I went to work on Thursday morning, I said, this guy either staged a car or a boat at the launch, and now he's gone somewhere else. He's gone mobile. And that usually doesn't happen with active shooters. Like, they do these mass shootings and they kill themselves, or they're found somewhere real close. So my first thought was he staged a vehicle because he knew he has military training. He has a whole military background. He's an outdoorsman. He's a good shooter. So I figured he planned this. He planned this out because then someone said, well, a couple days in the woods, he's not going to have any food. I'm like, he planned this. Do you not think that he probably had something in the woods somewhere, maybe? And so that was my original thought. So they hunted all around. They were raiding houses all around the area. And then my other thought was, is he going to do this again? He's already done it twice, which is why, like I said earlier, I am glad they closed the schools.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we wonder about with the Sutherland Springs, Texas shooting is the killer had, just absolutely massacred that church. It was really a horrible event there. And then when he was going off and getting into his car, he was leaving as well, going someplace else. And Stephen Williford, who lived nearby, heard the shots and came running barefoot, thumbing rounds into a magazine, and then thumbing rounds into a magazine, and then engaged the shooter and ended up fatally wounding him. He did end up driving away, but he succumbed to his wounds down the road. But he had more ammo in the car, so there was a possibility that there was a second attack that man was planning as well. So either way, it's hard to say, but also as we're getting deeper and deeper into this spree shooting culture, I guess you could say, they're becoming less and less cookie cutter.
Yeah, that was my biggest concern, because I was talking to people and I'm like, usually it's some nut job who just decides, I'm just going to go out and do my thing, and then I'm going to shoot myself. And this was very planned, almost like a military operation. And the guy was in the military. Not saying, obviously, but he had the training. He had the training to know how to evade. He had the training to know, I'm going to do this here, I'm going to do this here, I'm going to stage a vehicle or stage something. He didn't ultimately actually do that. But he could have. And that was my concern, that he was going to go find another target-rich environment. And so that was why I really liked the fact that our superintendent, even though we're 50 miles north, get in a car, it doesn't take you that long to drive 50 miles north. You get into a car they don't know that you have, and he could have just driven up on I-95 and gone up to Waterville or gone to Augusta.
The amount of time that he was he was unaccounted for. He could have driven to Texas. That was
right.
They went on high alert on the border crossings in Maine, as well as New Hampshire and Massachusetts police officers were also on high alert, because there is a good chance that and I'm sure actually that people in Vermont and New York as well probably were also aware of him and on the lookout, because at that point in time, the longer they waited, the further he could get.
I'll tell you what, though, I was real happy when New Hampshire State Police came up with the helicopter, because those guys don't frig around.
No, they do not.
They got to get back and get their tax-free booze.
All right.
No.
So do we want to get to the point of what actually happened?
So what happened was they found him in a recycling container. He'd shot himself. Thankfully. Unfortunately, I was kind of. They almost canceled hunting season for those. They actually did cancel it until they found out he was dead.
Yep.
He was found in the back of a tractor trailer, like just the back part?
Storage trailer.
Trailer. It's the back part that goes on the trailer, on the truck.
Yeah.
He was found in the back of that. He apparently was 10 miles away from the boat launch, from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. They had canceled hunting in those 4 cities, Lisbon, Lewiston, Monmouth, and Bowdoin. But they rescinded that, so people were able to go out this morning and go deer hunting. A lot of people were saying, yeah, he's got like 2 days, and then guess what? There's going to be a bunch of people out hunting. And I was really kind of hoping that some old man spitting tobacco or smoking a cigarette, wearing a flannel shirt and an old knit cap, just like took him out with his old 30-30.
Yep.
Because if he was hiding in the woods, he wouldn't have lasted long on the first day of hunting season.
No.
And he would have just driven up to the tagging station, be like, "Hey guys, can I get a tag for this?"
Yeah. For those who have not been to Lisbon, Maine, it is very rural, and the lesbians, as I affectionately call them, are some serious rednecks.
Let's just say that no Maine deer hunter would have blinked an eye and taken this asshole out. And they still would have dressed and quartered him and put him right on the hood of their old Chevy.
Yeah, and actually, maybe you heard this. I heard this from my father, but I don't think I caught an exact statement about that. But this recycling center that he was at was a former employee of his, and that they had cleared out the recycling center itself, but they didn't realize the trailers across the road were also belonged to the same place.
Yeah, I guess they happened to say, "Oh yeah, we have these old trailers. You guys should go check them out." And so they told the state police about it, and that's when they found him.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you right now, it hits a lot closer to home when it's right around here.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't change my views. Apparently, it changes Jared Golden's views, but it doesn't change my views because if you had been carrying a gun in that bowling alley or in that bar, you may not have been able to stop him, and that's the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy came in heavy, and he just went to work. But I would rather be able to at least be able to tell myself, if I survived, that I tried to do something as opposed to not do it. I mean, you could try to do something. I'm not saying anything against you should carry. If you can carry.
Mm-hmm.
But these people who put their lives on the line, they were there, and the people who passed away, they did everything they could. And I don't know that there's anything else they could have done to prevent this guy from continuing the massacre.
No, that you have, even though, again, yeah, this guy went out on his own terms, which is unfortunate. We have lots of instances where unarmed people have been able to foil a mass shooter. And we have many instances now, of mass shooters that many of which never became mass shooters because they were armed people. The best example being Eli Dickin in the food court in Indiana, where he shot the killer at 25 yards. Or was it 50 yards? It was a long shot.
Yeah, it was a good shot. Yeah,
but yeah, he smoked that guy before he could kill more than a couple people. And of course we have, Jack Wilson at the church in White Settlement, Texas. And
I'm sorry, but I love that video.
That was another nice long shot. And
357 SIG, baby.
357 SIG. But and also I mentioned Stephen Willifert's story. Again, there's a chance, I would argue a good chance, that guy was doing the exact same that this one's doing. Is he killed everybody at that, church and then was going to a second location and start a second shooting. And because Stephen Williford put rounds on target and got the guy there, he was not able to get to any place else. So, at the very, very least, the guy was driving away. So Stephen Williford managed to stop this manhunt and uncertainty that happens with when a killer's in the wind. This was that. And
the heroism of all the stories we've heard of the people who either sheltered the children or took bullets for the children, and grabbing the butcher. I can't say I wouldn't do the same. If I didn't have my gun on me and I was a manager of a restaurant and some guy came in, I'd grab a butcher knife. I'd do whatever I could. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't think twice about my own safety in terms of that. I wouldn't.
I mean, at that point in time, you've got to assume that killer is there to kill everybody there. So your safety is already gone. So taking extra steps for your safety is really pissing into the wind as far as I'm concerned.
And I'm not trying to sound like a badass, but like, I'm going to do everything I can. If I can chop that guy's throat with a butcher knife, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm. No. And I mean, these are things to think about. If you never thought about it, you're not going to think about it when you're panicking.
Right.
And so let's take a brief moment to talk about the killer just on what we know is, as you mentioned, he was in the Maine National Guard. And so he was trained. Was he a firearms instructor for the Guard?
He was a firearms instructor for the Guard. He was committed to a mental institution back down when he was training in New York. I don't remember the name of the base or whatever. They kept him for 2 weeks and they released him. But he apparently bought the gun after he was released from the institution.
I heard before, so that's a little. I've read reports that said that he bought it before he went down to New York for the training.
It's still kind of separating a little bit of the wheat from the chaff here. Regardless, Maine doesn't have a red flag law, but it has a yellow flag law, which I don't know what that means.
I believe it's that it's mental health people get involved first. Gets reported to instead of law enforcement. Essentially, it's if I have to say, like, if you're going to have a quote unquote flag law, for lack of a better term, this yellow flag seems like it's a little bit better. And I'm no way an expert on it, but when it comes to red flag laws, here in Massachusetts, we have red flag, and it means that if somebody calls in a red flag on you, it means the police show up, they will confiscate all of your firearms and put them in an evidence locker. And then it starts the ball rolling on you essentially going before a judge and determining whether or not you're a danger or not. And if you're a danger, then they deal with you that way. If you're determined not to be a danger, you allegedly will get your guns back. I have my doubts.
However, regardless, we had all these laws, and it didn't prevent this guy from doing anything. And people are talking about new laws.
Yes.
And guess what? If the old laws don't work, why do we need new ones?
That's correct. Yeah. So Jared Golden flipping on the assault weapons ban wordage. I mean, number one, it shows he's an idiot because he can't read the court documents to know that that's not going to fly. But two, what on earth is that going to get done? Look at all of the mass shootings in California. So, it's
like, do you know how many people own guns in Maine and who own AR-15s just in Maine? Like, even if you pass all these laws, it's not going to prevent anybody from doing this sort of thing if they want to.
Mm-hmm. So this guy had supposedly. Did you hear the story as well that he was obviously having psychotic issues and he was hearing voices and the voice.
He got hearing aids from the VA, I believe, or from somewhere, and then he said he started hearing voices. And to me, I was like, well, yeah, that's what hearing aids are supposed to do.
But he supposedly was hearing.
But he was going nuts.
Yeah, he was supposedly hearing hearing bad things through the hearing aids that may have linked to this bowling alley and to this bar. Though there's also talk that maybe there was an ex-partner that might have been a regular at the bar.
Well, that's the thing, because I heard that too, and you think about it, this seemed very targeted. Why would you drive to two specific places? Like, usually these are random. They just go to a grocery store and do their thing. But these were two specific places he went. So that does lead me to believe, rightly or wrongly, that he thought this ex-partner or whatever was either at the bowling alley or at the bar. And I had heard that someone had said that he had been a regular at that bar. The other thing is, I don't know if it's just a coincidence, but I don't know if he was friends with people in the deaf community, but there was a pretty high number of people from the deaf community who were shot and killed.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
Yeah, the interpreter for Shaw, there was probably like 3 of them. So I don't know if that has something to do with it. Maybe he was friends with them. I mean, given the whole fact that he had to have hearing aids put in, I don't know if there's some connection there. But it's just,
either way, it's a horrible event. It was a messy situation. There were laws in place that clearly weren't working. There's still more to be learned, but I was worried actually as this was going on. I was talking to you before they found his body about maybe we're still doing this for this show, because I really wanted to get you on specifically to talk about this rather than just Aaron and I talking about it from afar. But yeah, I'm glad this has finally come to a close. My daughter's in Maine right now, so that was, I mean, at this point in time, any place is as dangerous as any place else with him in the wind, because he could be 10 miles from where he was, or he could be 1,000 miles. But yeah, either way, I'm glad it's all over. My heart goes out to all the people affected. Both just the people of the Lewiston Auburn area, but also to anybody that was touched by this. Like, this was an awful event, but remember, this can happen to you, and it's not laws that are going to stop this. And especially my heart goes out to the brave people that fought back, because even though that did not work, it's absolutely been proven to work in the past. And so that's the quintessential thing of bravery, is knowing that you're probably not going to be able to do it, and you do it anyway. And in Connor, I will say my son Connor, I don't let him swear often, but when he woke up the other morning, he goes, "Did they get that motherfucker?"
Frig.
And I said, "Yes, honey, they did."
Oh.
And he goes, "Good." He goes, "Did they shoot him?" I said, "No, unfortunately, he shot himself." He goes, "Oh, I was hoping the cops are going to waste him."
Yep.
And I was like, "Thank you, Connor." Like, that's...
No, that was, that's gotta be tough on kids. My daughter was asking all the time about that too, especially one of her best friends, her grandmother lives in Lewiston. So she was hearing a lot about this.
I didn't feel like keeping it from him or from Cameron was going to be any use, because people are going to be talking about it.
Oh, my daughter heard about it that day in school. For all that, like all the kids here in North Shore, Massachusetts had all heard about it. So yeah, this stuff gets to the grapevine pretty fast. But
I told them, I said, a guy came in with a rifle and he shot a bunch of people. I said, he's a bad man, and hopefully the cops get him. I said, there's nothing. If you hide it from them, they're going to learn about it somewhere, especially now in the age of social media. So why hide it from them? You be the ones to tell them about it.
Yeah.
Don't have them learn it from somewhere else.
No, that's another great message. All right. Well, we've gone on long enough about this. I'm glad that it's all over. I'm glad life's getting back to normal for you in Maine.
Thank God.
But yeah, so yeah, you can catch Ryan and I on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network. And thank you so much, Ryan, for coming on ACP.
Absolutely.
So I really want to thank you two for doing this. I mean, not only because Ryan had a perspective that pretty much all news outlets wouldn't, but because you guys recorded that, I didn't have to dig into this. We didn't have to chew it over. This was an incredibly unpleasant thing, and it was really nice to know that it was taken care of without me having to do it. So I really appreciate that.
Well, yeah, that is great. Though you did do some digging because you just found an article that has literally dropped just before we started recording the show. You posted it while I was talking with the guys doing blooper reel shenanigans. But the headline is Army decided that Maine shooting gunman, not going to name him, shouldn't have had a weapon after erratic behavior in July.
Yeah. So there's a lot to this that I really may not be able to get into, but the short version here is that it's the old refrain once again. The shooter was known to the authorities. And they knew back in July. And back in July, the Army determined he was, quote, non-deployable due to concerns over his well-being, unquote. And the Army decided he shouldn't have a weapon, he shouldn't handle ammunition, or participate in any sort of live fire activity. They basically red flagged him without actually red flagging him. And I have to wonder what's going on, and we'll probably never know what happened because, if the records exist, and they may not, they may have already been shredded, but if they do exist, they're probably going to be hidden behind HIPAA. I'm not at all a medical anything, but it does seem to me that for someone who is reported as hearing voices and either hearing voices telling him to shoot up a base or having fantasies of shooting up a base, that 2 weeks of hospitalization is really not enough. And he should have been in there for... it's easy to say that in hindsight, but just in general, if you're having these paranoid fantasies, you need to be in there for quite a long time, and 2 weeks just doesn't seem like enough. And he was in there for 2 weeks, and they just let him out. And what's more is that after having been let out, I believe, the sheriff's department was looking for him on at least 2 occasions. In September, the deputy couldn't find him at his home, and that prompted the sheriff to send out an alert asking authorities throughout the state to look for him. And this alert to law enforcement agencies to locate him was canceled on October 18, a week before the shooting. Now, you've got something linked in the show notes, and I'll let you handle that. And it's about someone changing their stance on gun laws. And I'm going to say something which I know all of our regular listeners know what I'm going to say. And the thing is, all of the gun laws in the world will not do anything if the authorities do not do their job. And I don't know who screwed up. It seems like multiple people screwed up. But it just seems to me that the framework was in place to many, many people. Not just his boss, but his family members said, this guy is having problems. And they did what they should do. They brought him to the attention, and they tried to get him help. But he didn't get the help he needed. He was let go early. They stopped looking for him. And that's the problem. It won't be solved by passing more laws. It will be solved by people actually doing their jobs. I don't know how to solve this because I don't really know where the error lies. It could be that the hospital was overstaffed. It could be that the sheriff is just overworked. I don't know. But this is the sort of thing that deserves investigation because clearly mistakes were made, and these are the kind of mistakes you can't afford to make. So I don't know if anything is ever going to come from this, but I really hope that there's some sort of audit. Again, I'm not looking to blame people. Let's just find a way to keep this from happening in the future, for crying out loud.
Yeah, let's patch the holes.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
and this is just a long-standing thread that's going through. As I've mentioned before, like at the same time, two people very close to me, without giving out too much information, two people very, very close to me were diagnosed with some pretty severe mental illnesses, and both of them needed a lot of intervention to help them out. And one of these people was from a family that is fairly well to do, and they have money. And another one was from a family that was not very well to do. As a matter of fact, they're on public assistance, and both of them struggled greatly to try to get the help that they needed. And it took almost a full year for both of them to really start getting some meaningful help that has led to both people having extremely better, improvements in their quality of life. And so, it's not hopeless. I'm not saying, our system is completely hopeless, but boy, it's really, really slow, and it's really, really bad. And both people had their lives completely as the caretakers. Both of these people were minors at the time that were suffering from mental illness, and so their parents were struggling because they had to devote so much time and effort to work them through this system. And it didn't matter if you could throw money at it. It didn't matter if you were in need. The system is really, really lacking. And so that the help is out there, but it's real thin on the ground. And so you're going to have to wait for a long, long time to get it. And this just seems to be just another instance on that, is he was identified. I mean, I've heard multiple reports that the family itself that this guy's from are kind of that family, and they're kind of the town weirdos. I'm just speaking on pure hearsay, and I apologize to this guy's family if anyone hears this and is offended by that, but I've heard multiple accounts on all that. So, there's certainly some talk of that, and there might have been essentially some precursors to this, but literally getting pulled out of service during a military exercise, and essentially confessing to hearing voices and having violent fantasies, and then being brought to a mental health facility and actually being treated for, it sounds like 2 weeks. I've heard some people say that it was less time than that, and we're still early on, that there might be some clarification here. But essentially, he was on the radar and in the system, and rather than the system then taking him and holding on to him and working until he was stabilized and until he was both safe for himself and for others, they just let him go. And he wasn't safe, and it wasn't time. It wasn't ready. And people are dead because of this. And so I'm with you, Aaron. I don't necessarily want to see heads rolling for this. I just want to see these holes get patched. And this is another state that Maine has what's called a yellow flag law, which I believe means that actually mental health people actually get involved first before all the law enforcement action happens. But essentially, there was a system, and that system was not utilized. And again, all the gun laws in the world just don't work if you don't enforce them. And I'll use that as the segue to I was expecting Ryan to speak more about it in the interview, because we had spoken about Maine Representative Jared Golden at length before this before we sat down to actually do the interview. he kind of pulled the punch a little bit. But I will say right now, this is a very, very bad look. So Jared Golden is the rep for this district in Maine. He is a Democrat, and he has been very, very pro-gun in the past. And I will say that Maine is a purple state. There are lots of blue districts and there's lots of red districts. But when it comes to guns, Maine is fairly pro-gun, though there are absolutely anti-gun people within the state as well. Angus King is one. I'm looking at you. But the current governor of Maine, Janet Mills, has openly said she would veto any gun control law that comes across her desk, and even after this has openly spoken out against passing more laws in the wake of this tragedy. And I applaud her for that. And she is not a conservative Democrat in any sense. She is, very much a liberal in every sense of the word, but she supports the right to keep and bear arms. And for that, I applaud her. And Jared Golden was one of those. I wasn't familiar with him before this happened, but I did know that he voted against, many of the assault weapons bills that were put through in the last few years that we've talked about. And now he has switched his stance, and I'm not even going to bother reading his statement. It's garbage. The link's in the show notes, but I'm just saying this is a really bad look. Obviously, it sucks for us pro-gunners. If there were pro-gun people within the district, and now they're hearing that he's coming for their guns, well, that's going to change their mind about a lot of things. But also for the anti-gun people, this isn't a good look, because what he's saying is, the opening thing I have opposed efforts to ban deadly weapons of war like the assault weapons used to carry out this crime. So he's already switching his wording around to saying that these aren't just commonly used firearms that everyone has the right to use and can be used for hunting and self-defense and all of the legal reasons. No, he's calling them deadly weapons of war. He's saying that these have no place on the streets, but he supported them being on the streets until something happened in his district, until something happened to him. And it's just a really, really bad look. And this is just, there's no way that you can look at this dude and not see it as being contemptible. And yeah, so
is he perhaps up for re-election soon?
It's House of Representatives. So yeah, it's every 2 years. So yeah, it won't be this November, but it'll be the next one. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we will see that. That will be interesting to see. I wonder even if this is going to be one of those ones of the, he's going to do what Mitt Romney did and just go, things aren't looking good for me. I got other things to do. We shall see. I certainly urge people within the state of Maine on all walks of life to contact Jared Golden and let him know what a bad look this is. So yeah, that's the main story in a nutshell. I am so glad that he was found dead and that this is all over. Like I said, the police were on high alert here in Massachusetts, and all of southern Maine, the schools in the section, the part of Maine where I used to live, were all closed down as well, and colleges and all of that. So the whole state was really brought to its knees just as a means to catch this guy. And so I'm glad that that's all over, because it was extremely disrupting and it was extremely terrifying.
So on to better news, and this is something that's a little bit different. I don't normally do interviews, and technically this isn't an interview. This is me telling a story, but I needed to get other people involved, and so this is the story that I call The Amazing Newbie. Hello, listeners. I know that I don't normally do these sorts of things, but this is a special occasion because, well, I was present for this and Weer'd wasn't. So as I mentioned previously, I spent the weekend near Vegas with some wonderful people at the Liberal Gun Club, and they are with me today. Now, you probably know Lara, but I'm going to let her introduce herself. Hi, Lara. Who are you for the people who are joining us for the very first time?
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me on again. I am Lara Smith, and I'm the national spokesperson for the Liberal Gun Club.
Mm-hmm. Great. And with us is someone who hasn't been on the show before. Mark, would you please introduce yourself?
Be happy to. My name is Mark Okniansky. I am the California chapter president for the Liberal Gun Club, and I'm also a member of their newly formed national operations team.
That sounds really interesting. What is the national operations team?
We do the national scale type of events, such as the one that you attended. It's our annual meeting. It used to be just the 4 board members who did everything for the club, but as the club has grown quite exponentially over these last few years, they, in their wisdom, decided to delegate some of those duties for planning events and the like. So I'm part of a team of people who help make these things happen. So,
okay, so you're head of ops, basically.
I'm a member of the team. I don't want to take. I don't want Mike to get mad at me. He's actually in charge of the team.
Okay, would that be Mike Ross?
Yes, that's right.
Another lovely individual who put up with me and my sometimes diva-ish demands. So, Mike, if you're listening, much love to you. All right, so I brought you all here so we can tell the story that I call The Amazing Newbie. And none of us were there for all of it, which is why we're all here. So I'll start off, and I was sitting in the clubhouse of Pro Gun Vegas, sitting at my table that was festooned and bedecked with Operation Blazing Sword and Pink Pistol merchandise. And where I was sitting, I had a great view of the foyer and bar, and I noticed people coming and going. And while I was there, and this was on Saturday, I noticed a very elegant-looking lady, and she looked out of place because what she was wearing is not the sort of thing that I would wear to a shooting range. Now, fortunately, she was wearing a very sensible top and didn't have to worry about catching brass, but she was also wearing a fairly short skirt, not a mini skirt, but definitely above the knee, and ankle boots with, fortunately, fairly chunky heels. And she didn't look like she belonged there, somewhere between unsure and uncomfortable. And she was frequently walking back and forth. And really, the impression I got was she was waiting to meet someone for a date, because she seemed like she was dressed for a date and not for going to the range. And as she would walk back and forth, she would cast glances at me, curious glances. And I would smile to her, but I didn't want to make her more uncomfortable by waving her over. And she did this for quite a bit of time. I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. And I don't know what changed her mind, but she finally found the courage to come over, and she headed straight towards the Pink Pistols banner that I had on the table. And she said, "I think this is great because I have a gay son and he needs to learn how to defend himself." And I went, oh, hey, we've got something to talk about now. And so I engaged her in conversation about what Pink Pistols was and what Operation Blazing Sword was and a lot of our history. And she seemed very interested. And she told me that she had come here because some of her friends were going to teach her how to shoot. But they were running late because they were massively hungover from getting drunk on Friday night. And she wasn't really sure what to do. And I talked with her a bit more. And then I believe it was another member of the organization. I don't know if it was David or if it was a lady. Also got to talking to her. and she ended up sitting on the couch. And I believe that's when Mark comes into play.
Actually, I came into play a little before that. There's going to be like one of those, mystery type of dinners where everyone has like a different version of the events. It's
Sure.
funny. So I also noticed somebody walking around inside of our lounge, and I wasn't sure if maybe this was a member who was lost. I was actually in the lounge helping set up. We're about to have lunch. And I saw her looking a little like what you described, halfway between scared and curious. And so I had actually approached her right then and said, "Hey, are you a member? Did you have a question? I don't want you to think we're ignoring you over here." So, and that's when she told me her story, the same one she told you. And so we talked a little bit about that. I explained what we were doing there. The Liberal Gun Club, we're having our annual meeting. But I said she's very nice. She was apologizing profusely. "Oh, I didn't mean to come out." I said, "Don't worry about it. Relax, But yeah, if your friends are going to come, I said they're probably going to come in where the bar is." And so she went back over there, and eventually she came back. There was a lot of people at the clubhouse and the bar, both from our group and not from our group. She ended up gravitating back, and I think that's when she spoke with you, Aaron. I kind of gave her some space as well because I didn't want to crowd her. I didn't want her to feel awkward. And I saw her talking to you. I saw her talking to Dave later, and so I was like, great. The more members she meets, the better.
Yeah, and let me jump in on something because I suspect that we have a bunch of listeners going at the bar. So let me clarify this. Yes, we're at a gun range, and yes, there's a bar. This is Vegas. There's a bar everywhere. So Pro Gun is a range that's about 25 to 30 minutes outside of the Strip. It's a very good range down there. But when you come into their office, when you get to the range, you walk in and you literally walk into a bar. And to the left is a room, which is where we were set up, and to the right is where you register to go shoot and what have you. And if you're going to shoot that day, you get an armband, and you're not allowed to drink until that armband is removed. And once your armband is removed and you've had a drink, you may not go back out to a live firing range. So as odd as this sounds about a bar at a gun range, no, this is okay. And it makes sense when you're there.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, it does. And just to clarify, they cut your wristband before they serve you anything, and you can't go back out and shoot. So they've thought of all of that. But it is, I will say, if you're in Vegas, it's one of the cheapest bars you'll find. But they also have top shelf stuff, so it's a good place. But anyhow, we'll call her C, was there, and she had told me that she was waiting for her friends. I said, look, if they show up, great. If they don't show up and you still want to learn, you came all this way, I'll teach you, or somebody here can teach you how to shoot. We've got the ranges, we've got the guns. You really don't have to worry about anything. So she said, that's great. Then she ended up talking to Dave for a while. We invited her to stay for lunch. We had extra sandwiches that were catered in. So she did that, and turned out her friends did not actually show up. So she Ubered all this way from the Strip all the way to Pro Gun. And her friends didn't show up. So obviously we weren't going to leave her just sitting there.
Let me jump in here. One thing that I noticed, both from what you said and from me talking to her, is that her attitude was very much, oh no, I don't want to be a bother. And you were saying, and I was saying, and I know Lara said, you made all these offers, and she's like, oh no, I don't want to be problem. I don't want anyone to make a scene over me. But at the same time, we could all feel she really, really wanted to be a part of this, which is why I think so many people gravitated to her. And I think we all knew we had one on the hook, quote unquote.
I think that's right. And one thing I should point out, again, for listeners who aren't familiar with the Liberal Gun Club, I'm sure Aaron has talked about being out with us for the weekend. But one of the reasons we could make the offers of, hey, come with us, is that we had, I'm not even sure how many certified instructors out there, but we had plenty of people. Not only does our organization, have these kind of informal meetups, but we have an instructor program. So we knew that we had people, and one of our specialties is teaching new gun owners and teaching people who are not traditional gun owners or who have never fired a firearm, teaching them how to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And we have intro classes and what have you. So it wasn't like we were like, oh, you need to join. It was, we had 25 people who could teach her to shoot. She could pick, so she really wasn't imposing on us at all.
Oh, of course. And
absolutely. And the same thing, she didn't want to eat our sandwiches. And we're like, we have extra. These are going to get thrown away, please.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was that kind of situation.
Right. And that's where I come in again, because she's sitting there and I don't know if she's hungry, but I figure she hasn't eaten lunch. And we've got all these uneaten meals. I mean, it looked like we had a couple dozen. And so that's when I went to you, Mark, and I asked you if you had offered her lunch, and you said yes. And I go, okay, I know what's going on. She's hungry, but she doesn't want to be a problem. And so the way I approached it was, I'm not going to give her the opportunity to say no. So I go over to her, and I crouch down so I'm not, looming over her. And in my best, okay, honey voice, I say, now, see, what would you prefer to eat? Roast beef, chicken, or vegetarian? And once that barrier had been broken, where I had communicated to her, look, I'm going to feed you. There's not going to be an argument about it. Just tell me what you want. Her face lit up and she said, roast beef, please. And I went and I got her the lunch, and then she started digging in, all while talking to different people. She's a very, very animated talker. And while she's engaging with various members of LGC and she's eating, that's when I sneak over to Lara and I go, I think we got a live one here. And I give her the brief version of what's going on. And I say, she needs training. Her friends, they aren't going to show up. Let's see what we can do to get her some training. And so what did you do then, Lara?
So I went over to her, and I think one of the things, I think, Erin, you downplayed how she was dressed. She was dressed up. This wasn't just, some kind of your regular day chunky boots and a little skirt. This was a very, very nice skirt and fairly swanky black leather boots, suited to things that are not a Rocky gun range in Vegas.
Clubbing.
And clubbing. I mean, and she was dressed for a date. And when that happens, I've seen this happen more than once at the range, and this is I'm going to go off for a moment here. If you invite one of your friends to the range who's not a shooter, please tell them how to dress before they get there. Make sure that they know comfortable, low-heeled footwear, a shirt that brass isn't going to go down. This is especially important for women because we get lots of V-neck shirts or button-up shirts, and it's an issue. And I've seen this happen so many times at the range, and I can always be like, oh, look, date. First date. So I'm going to say that for people, like, make sure you tell your friends when they're coming to the range, like, hey, this is appropriate range wear, even before you get there. It's kind of one of the first parts of gun safety. But whoever had invited her had not done that. And
or showed up.
So she was already uncomfortable. And but I could tell. I'd had about 3 or 4 people kind of come over and say something like, hey, there's this girl here, and so when Erin came to get me, I came over to talk to her and kind of wanted to find out, like, what's going on. What happened at first, really, in part because of how she was dressed. I wanted to make sure she was safe. Although I felt like that had probably already been done. That was my first thought was, are you safe? Are you somewhere that you feel safe? Is the first thing we need to do to have you not be here? Do we need to get you some security? Turns out she was fine. And then we started talking about how she got there and why she was there. And she described it as that some of her male friends were taking her various places to learn how to do things that men like. So it made it easier for her to meet men. I have opinions about that, but be that as it may, it was an interesting, the way she said it was really interesting. And she said, I decided to do this because it's something outside my comfort zone. And then my friends didn't even bother to show up. And I said, well, why don't you relax with us? Why don't you hang out with us for the day? you're already out here. And have you ever shot a firearm before? Yeah, I've shot shotguns before. And I don't remember what it was she had shot, but she had, as for a handgun, but she had very much not. But she had at least been to the range, or at least had experience with a firearm at least. So we started talking about that, and I said, have you taken any classes? What have you done? And so we went through kind of the beginner assessment, and also talked about, like, what are ranges like for women? What is it like to come out to a range? Because even at the Liberal Gun Club events, it's definitely more men heavy. And what is it like for people to come to these events? And then what's it like as a woman to be in this space? So we talked about that for a little while. And I think that really helped her be comfortable with, oh yeah, people are here and they recognize what these spaces are. And the fact that every person who had spoken to her, our most important thing for us, was to make sure she was safe and comfortable. That was our very first concern. And I think that really helped. And all of a sudden, we started talking, and I said, well, do you want it? We're going to finish up lunch in a little bit, and then people are going to head back out to the range. Your friends didn't come, but we'll teach you. And she said, yeah, let's do that. And she's like, what do you have to shoot? And I said, everything. What do you want to learn on? Well, I handled this one, and I do remember it was some 45. I don't remember what. I handled this one. I really did. Yeah, that's right. It was. And I said, you know what? Let's start you on something easier. And one of the people there had a 22 that I said, hey, do you mind if we use this for teaching a class? And our member was like, absolutely not. This is great. And so we got that set up, and then Mark took her up to the range.
Well, there was a brief interim there.
There was.
So everyone had finished up lunch and had gone off to go shoot, and Mark was giving her the safety talk. And I don't know if there was anything interesting that you want to talk about there before I butted in talking about stance.
No, your conversation about the stance. I want you to talk about that.
Oh,
I definitely really good.
I definitely will. I just didn't know if there was anything else.
Yeah, leading up to that, after everyone had finished and scattered off, I kind of started the verbal part of the presentation. The rules, the safety rules, what the different parts of the gun are, just very, very basics. But obviously we only had a limited amount of time, so she was a very smart person, so she picked it up real quick. It was she did relate one funny story I thought I should mention. She had Ubered to the range, and she said there was this little Venezuelan kid driving the Uber, and she told the story like 2 or 3 times, so it really made an impact on her. This kid, is driving up the range, and you hear the gunshots going off all over the place, and he was freaking out because he had told her that he had escaped Venezuela to escape the violence, and this was really getting the PTSD hitting hard on him. And so she felt so bad for that driver coming up. So again, that's part of her personality. She was really nervous the entire time about making other people work for her. So even when I took her up to the range, she wanted to walk up there. I said, I'm not making you walk in those heels over this rocky ground. We're driving. Lara said the same thing to her, because coming down, she wanted to walk again. Lara's like, no, we're going to drive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when she was nervous, I don't think she was nervous scared, although you may have different insight. It was more nervous of, I don't want to put people out. She had this huge degree of empathy, and it kind of worked against her at first until we took her under our wing and said, no, you're coming with us.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't think any of it was fear. I didn't ever get a sense of fear. It was more fear of, burdening others.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, we went through, I spent about an hour just talking through the different issues. I had a SIRT gun, so I started out with just the laser pistol, the SIRT gun. I had also set up an LASR steel challenge thing up on the wall, that gives you a ding every time your laser hits the target, kind of a thing. And so I started to transition her there so we can talk about stance and grip and all that. And I'll let Aaron come in, because because I started to try to explain the grip, but then Aaron came in and gave like the best analogy, and her stance just fixed itself, immediately.
Right. Okay, so she picked up the SIRT gun, and to her credit, she didn't do what I call the chick lean, which is where her head leans all the way back for whatever reason. I've seen so many women do it. But she wasn't quite getting the stance you wanted, and you understandably didn't want to put hands on her to show her what to do. And so I saw an opportunity, and I butted in, and I'm glad you were cool with it afterwards. I said, well, okay, see, just hang on a minute. I can tell that you work out, because she was in great shape. And so you do squats, right? Uh-huh. Well, here's what you do. And I took the pistol and I did a squat while holding the pistol. And I said, okay, so this is a squat, butt out and shoulders forward. So when you're adopting the posture, just begin a squat. And I showed her, and just the light clicked on instantly. And honestly, it reminded me of that one scene from Airplane, and paraphrased, it would be, excuse me, Mark, I speak woman.
That's exactly what it felt like. I'm like, oh no, you guys are speaking the language. I'm going to let you do that.
Yeah, and so once I explained, adopt a posture like you're just starting a squat, she got it, and there were no problems after that, were there?
Nope. No, she got the stance right away, just minor adjustments here and there. But, she, like I said, she picked things up very quickly, even with like the grip around the pistol, a couple tries, and she had that pretty good. But yeah, that little talk, just like you said, it was like a light bulb came on, and she got it. And she remembered it, because right after that, drove her up to our public range. So we had 5 different ranges, one of which was reserved for just people who wanted to open shoot and not take a class. We took the SR-22 Ruger up to that range. And I taught her how to load it, showed her what the magazine is, how to put the ammo in it, had her do that herself, which she did. And she had that that stance right away. She remembered that. A little bit of work on the grip, but she was firing that thing and hitting the target, no problem. Luckily the 22, it was a good gun for her. She was complaining that the Glock that she shot before was just so big and the recoil was so bad. I was like, this is why we're starting here. But she had a blast. She had a lot of fun. Of course, there were other people on the range, and there's a video actually. 3 guys come up with these rifles, and it's getting towards the end of the day, so they just want to like offload. So this poor lady is now like hiding behind me as these guys are like firing off these rifles. I'm like, okay, you guys get 1 magazine, and then we're getting back to work. But she didn't seem scared. I think she was laughing about it. But it was, it's a little much for a new shooter when you get on the range and there's, people just rapid firing AKs and, all their rifles. But right after that, our member who let us use the SR-22 came by and stole her away and took her down. We had another bay where we had a black powder being fired. Yep. So I think, Lara, you were there at that time, right?
I was. And I have to say, like, this is really her first formal range experience. And there were some things she didn't want to do. But one of the fun things about the black powder setup that we had, it was a black powder class, is that we had everything from hand mortars and handguns to kind of little pirate flintlock and all kinds of smaller one-hand firearms, and she was absolutely willing to try them. And one of the things about the mortar is that obviously we're not using it to launch primitive grenades, we're using it to launch tennis balls up and towards the back berm. And she was a little nervous about it because, black powder, you're not sure how big a bang it makes. And when we showed it to her, when she had a minute to stay and watch, she was like, yeah, I want to do that. And she did. And she tried that. And she tried one of the smaller little pistols. And she was excellent at taking direction. She really wanted to learn. And I think she was just so fascinated with the idea that the firearms community doesn't have to be shooting Glocks in a self-defense class. That it could be this camaraderie on the range, learning. I mean, really, the black powder class was just an amazing history. And the person, actually, the two people who brought the black powder firearms are both absolute experts in the field. And for her, and for a newbie especially, but for her in particular, it really resonated with her that there was more to this than just, you need a gun for self-defense. You need a gun because you need to learn how to protect yourself.
It could be fun and not just super serious all the time.
Exactly.
Right. And not only that, but also the way she had gotten there was, I'm big, strong, tactical dude. I'm going to take you to learn how to do what I like to do. And I think the fact of what she got to do that day totally broke that down. And there were women. Everyone at that black powder class at that point was a woman. And I think that she really got that experience. Firearms are fun, and the community has a lot of camaraderie in it.
Mm-hmm. Now, the main reason I wasn't there on the shooting range, I mean, partially was because I was babysitting the table, but also because she came fairly unprepared, didn't have eye pro, didn't have ear pro, and when she registered at the pro shop, they just gave her those foam earplugs, which it will work but are not great. And especially for a student who needs to hear what's going on, I'm going, no, honey, this will not do. And so I actually gave her my earmuffs so that she could have proper hearing protection, but also still hear Mark and the other people that were giving her instruction. And I'm pretty sure that worked out well. Mark, can you confirm?
Oh, yeah. No, she had no problems with it. And I think, thank you for doing that, because it does make it so much easier when, you can hear what people are saying to you. So, yeah, the foamies would have made it a lot harder.
Yeah. And this is not kudos to me. Oh, look, I self-sacrificingly gave it up. No. It's just, man, I wish I had been there, but it was more important that she get her time on the range where she could hear, rather than me have fun. So that's why I wasn't there for that.
One indicator that she had a good time is that she actually went back to her hotel, and we had our big dinner that night, and she came to that. She actually showed up.
Yeah, I was going to ask, who invited her?
I did.
Great.
Yeah. I told her we're having a dinner tonight. If you're not doing anything, come on by. You're invited.
Uh-huh. And how many times did you have to invite her before she decided she wasn't being a burden?
On that one, just the first. I think by then she already understood that it was okay to say yes.
Fantastic.
So, yeah. She caught an Uber back to her hotel, and then she came back that evening. I was a little nervous about it because I didn't get her contact information. I think she got yours, Aaron, and that was it. So I was like, if she shows up, great. If not, I have no way to contact her.
Yeah, I had no way to contact her either. I had given her my card so she could contact me, but I didn't know how.
Right. But it was lucky that she did show up, because we had a big raffle after the great speech that you gave, of course.
Oh, thank you.
We had a big raffle, and she actually won like the third place prize that had like a Mantis in it, and all this gear that everyone was all jealous about.
So for people who may not know, what's a Mantis?
It's a training aid that helps you work on your trigger pull. It measures through a gyroscope how much the gun moves when you pull the trigger, and gives you hints on how to correct that. So it's a great training tool. I've got one myself, and it is immensely helpful. So hopefully she actually gets a firearm that she could use it on.
Yeah. So by winning third prize,
go ahead.
she won what, a couple $100 worth of gear and swag?
Probably more than that, but yeah.
Yeah. Several $100s. I don't remember what else was in that pack, but it was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It was. But she did mention that she told her son. So her sons, she kept saying, are these 6'6", giants. And when they found out she was on the range, they went wild. She was so proud. Her sons were so proud of her for going out there. So I'm guessing they're going to get a lot of that swag.
Mm-hmm. So, Lara, has
Yes.
she joined LGC?
I do not know. I do not run membership. But my understanding was, as of that night, she had joined.
Oh.
So I think the answer to that is yes. Our dues are low. When I say I don't know that she has come into all the forums and into all of our online. So when you become a member, we have private Facebook groups. We have a private Discord server. I don't know whether she has appeared in those, but she has become a paid member of the organization.
Well, that's fantastic. I figured that's what she was going to do, just based upon how she was acting, how much fun she had, and how welcome she felt. But I didn't know for certain, and I really wanted to tie the bow on that. So it sounds like she has officially decided to join the firearms community.
At least in some form, yes. I think she is in the firearms community, and I definitely got the feeling. So I talked to her that night at dinner. And after dinner. Also, not only did she come to dinner, but then afterwards, a group of people went out for drinks. She came to that. I would love to know what happened with those friends. But clearly they were not around, and she was having a perfectly good time without them. And I think she probably spoke to almost everybody in the room.
Mm-hmm.
She had a great time, and we were talking, and she was telling me how, she not only did she want to join, but she really wanted to get her son involved. And she did talk a little bit about how it was nice to be somewhere that, she really felt like, wow, you guys really meant it when you said come along. Like, in that everyone in the room, nobody was like, who are you? Everybody was like, oh, you're here. Great. Tell me about you.
I mean, more than that, those of us who had met her were looking around going, where is she? I thought she was going to be here.
Yeah, no, everybody just kind of expected her to be there. And I think that more than anything was what really helped. So yeah, I think she is now a member of the firearms community. I expect she'll be getting some more training. And I think it's great, but I think that I think that it worked in part because we really made sure that she both felt welcome and safe.
Mm-hmm. And really, that's how we should treat everyone. Make everyone welcome, because the Second Amendment is for all people. Make them feel welcome, make them feel at home, make them feel safe, as you say. And as I like to say, a gun owner is a gun voter. And so the more informed and active people you have in the community, the better your chances of fighting these ridiculous gun prohibition laws.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that LGC does a lot, that our members do, is because we're obviously on the other side of the aisle from so many gun owners, we don't go and align with the typical pro-gun reps. We go talk to our anti-gun reps and say, hey, this is what we don't like that you're doing, and here's why. And we come at it from a perspective and from a framing that they understand. It's one thing to go in and say, well, I don't like this because it goes with my ideology. And it's another thing to come in and say, hey, I'm a liberal female voter, and the reason I don't like your new ridiculous law that you've put up is that it's making it harder for me to keep myself safe. And by the way, you're keeping my friends with domestic violence restraining orders, you're making them less safe. And nobody's ever said that to them, because I think it's important to remember that what people are arguing about is the best way to keep people safe. I think that gets lost in the conversation a lot. And when you can come in with a different framework for that, it's really important to do it.
I agree. One of the things that I've said, and I have to keep reminding myself of it because it's very easy to forget in the heat of the moment, is that the people who want to prohibit gun ownership are giving the benefit of the doubt in some situations. They're coming at it from a good place. They want to stop violence and murder. And we too want to stop violence and murder. We have the same goal in mind. We're just now haggling over the best way to approach it. And
right.
If you can keep that in mind, and again, that's difficult for me. But if you can keep that in mind, it's a lot easier to have a productive conversation rather than an adversarial argument.
For sure. And I think it's really important for people to think about, like, what is the stated goal of this? I mean, some of it is ridiculous, right? I mean, Mark and I live in California, and Newsom's not doing this to keep anybody safe. He's doing it to score political points. We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
But at our local level, my local rep, I have two, right? So one of my reps is a Republican at my state level, and one is a Democrat, and my assembly and my Senate. And I've met with both. And interestingly, my Republican state Senate member knows nothing about firearms, doesn't care, kind of party line voted on them.
Huh.
And I said, hey, did you vote for this law, which was a law that Republicans had put up that was equally as bad as what a bunch of Democrats were putting up, but just in a different way? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, this law is bad because of this, but look, this other law is bad because of this. Let's talk about it. And he said, wow, I've never thought about it that way. So it's important, especially at the local level, reps from all parties don't know. And when I go and I talk to my Democrat rep, I talk to him about, hey, let's talk about root cause mitigation. Here's why this law, XYZ law is not going to work. And plus it's infringing, plus it's going to cost us $1 bazillion, and you're going to lose in the end on this law. But, what if we did a law that actually we could put all that money towards something that would actually stop violence or at least help reduce it? And I go in with that point of view a lot. And it really helps because people never come and talk to them. They either get yelled at because they want to murder babies, or they get yelled at because, Michael dead hands. And neither one of those is productive.
Yeah, as tempting and sometimes satisfying as it is to yell "shall not be infringed" at top volume it's not really conducive to a productive conversation.
Definitely not with politicians, no.
So that's the story of the amazing newbie, and I want to welcome her to the community, assuming she hears this, and I hope she does. So before I wrap this up, Mark, is there anything you want to say, just in general, about you, your work with LGC, where to find you, just parting shots here?
Sure. Where to find me? I'm in Los Angeles, California. During Erin's talk with us at our annual event, she mentioned needing more instructors. So I do want to confirm that I have signed up with the OBS's instructor database.
Yes, you have. Good boy.
Yeah. So you can find me through that. I am the president of the California chapter. So if you are in California and you're not a Liberal Gun Club member, please join. You'll get emails from me. Other than that, I'm helping out more and more on a national scale, doing things like going to SHOT Show. So you'll be seeing me out and about doing what I can when I have time to do it.
Fantastic. And how about you, Lara?
So I, again, am the national spokesperson. I am one of the national board members. Liberal Gun Club has both a national organization and then, as Mark was saying, state-level organizations. We have instructors all over the U.S. We have instructors. We have our own instructor certification program. So if you know people who want an instructor but are really looking for somebody who is not kind of the typical mold, or somebody who says, you know what, I want to learn to protect myself, but I really don't want to take a class from the NRA. I really don't want to take a class from, kind of tactitude du jour. Let us know. We'll help find people. We specialize in training people in non-traditional gun owning communities. And we are happy to help out. And not only do we do that, but if you have someone who says, my spouse or my partner has a firearm and I don't know, what am I going to do if something happens to them? I don't even know how to touch the thing. We teach a class called Making It Safe for Non-Shooters about how to unload and make safe the most common firearms. And, we do all of that. So come check us out. You can always come look up more about us at theliberalgunclub.com, where we have events as you heard about, our annual, but we have local ones as well. Mark and I will be at SHOT Show this year, although we are not doing a booth this year for a bunch of reasons, but we will be there. So if you're going to be at SHOT, we will hopefully have some more unicorn patches this year to hand out. Can find one of us to grab a patch. And we're available. You can always email me. We have an info@theliberalgunclub.com email, and that'll get to me. And see, we have a public Facebook page. You can always message me through that, through our Instagram. And I'm happy to answer questions about getting training, news shooters, going and talking to your reps, what's it like to be a liberal and a gun owner? I am happy to talk about that with people, and more than willing to. And before you ask, no, I'm not a classical liberal.
Okay. Just because you brought it up, can you expand on that?
A lot of people come in with this, oh, you're a liberal. You mean classical liberal, kind of code word, libertarian-ish or libertarian of some format. And the answer is no. I don't like Joe Biden because I don't think he's very up to the left. There's a thing about, if you go far enough left, you get your guns back. I am fully, truly liberal in the sense that I believe that liberal policies are democratic policies and that they help our communities. And that's probably a whole nother interview, but yeah. I definitely think that a lot of people say, oh, you're just code wording for a different type of conservative, and that's not what we are. Our organization, but I will say the Liberal Gun Club has everything from, we welcome people of all political stripes. And, we joke that we have everything from libertarians to anarchists, but that's probably not broad enough.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time and for telling this great story. And back to you, Weer'd. So first, I want to point out that when I said Dave or David, I wasn't talking about our own David Bach. I didn't even notice it while I was doing it, but when I listened to it, I figured that out. Rather, I'm talking about my friend David Phillips, who I hope is listening. Second, I don't know about you, Weer'd, but I was really surprised when Lara said that one of her state representatives is a Republican. I mean, I know rationally that there are some parts of California which are conservative, but that still shocked me.
Yeah, well, as someone who lives in Massachusetts, and we've had I just mentioned in the before at the end of the last segment about Mitt Romney. He was a Massachusetts Republican, and I think if you followed his career at all, you know what kind of a Republican he is. So, and California is known for that as well. There are some absolute conservatives that have come out of California, and there are some Republicans in name only that come out of California, and there's some they have a wide mix from, again, super duper conservative areas, especially in the rural and the farming areas. They definitely are definitely fall more in kind of a more Midwestern vibe, if you will, than say, your Los Angeles and San Francisco's and Sacramento's. But yeah, it's a big state, and it's a weird state. So I gotta say, Aaron, holy crap. Like, all right, I set up an interview with one of my closest friends, and who I do a podcast with every week. As a matter of fact, we just sat down and we recorded that interview, and then we just we took a quick bathroom break, and then we recorded Handgun Radio. You got two separate people coordinated to tell this story. That's not easy to do. So
no, it's not.
Yeah, no. So kudos on that. And oh my God, yeah, you're right. This was really not an interview. This was a narrative, and I really loved how it flowed. And it's such a good story. It was so heartwarming, both on the just how well the Liberal Gun Club treated this new person, just welcomed them in, but also, I remember a friend of mine showed up at a blog shoot, and she had never shot a gun before in her life. And, Yeah, literally on her first time on the range, people are handing her machine guns. and not just like, oh no, we're gonna hand her an M60 and she's just gonna get her brains pummeled out because she's a new shooter and a tiny lady and shooting a way too big machine. No, like somebody had a suppressed 22 M16, registered M16 lower, 22 upper, suppressor, and then like a red dot on the top of it. It was like playing a video game. Like it was so fun to shoot. Just dump that little magazine and it was hearing safe and no recoil. Just lots of smoke and noise. And my one other comment that I wanted to say is I've got two other comments. Is one is the telling friends how to dress is a very, very good point. I think so many of us have been shooting for so long, we just assume that other people know what a gun range is like. But like, if you've taken someone to a gun club or gun range for the first time, like I know my own wife when she first went there, I think she was surprised at what a safe and controlled environment the gun club was. I think she was expecting like more peril and more danger to go to these, it's a gun club. This is not the kind of place that like regular people go to. And it's just we're just going to be shooting guns. But also, what to wear is, you don't want to have someone showing up with like, open-toed shoes and the low-cut blouse and all that. You want to make sure that you have all the proper safety gear with you. I actually always have extra ear protection and extra safety glasses. And I also keep like a pack of those little foamies just in the odd case that like, there's suddenly a bunch of people on the range, or I see somebody else. I've actually handed them out to other people. People have showed up on the range and they're like, they don't have ear protection. I'm like, here, just take these. They're not great, but they're at least better than nothing. And my last point was on Lara's little bit at the end where she says, once you get so liberal that you get your guns back. And I've absolutely heard that before. And it's a great line, but also I gotta say it's also kind of a line that I don't like on how it says is I really think the key point is that the Second Amendment is nonpartisan, just like freedom of speech is nonpartisan. All the amendments, they're nonpartisan, and really the only difference you've got is that all the people have the right to keep and bear arms, and no matter what your position is on and how you view the world, the ability to defend yourself and the lives of others fits into both of those political mindsets. But also the people that want you disarmed is really more of these are the upper echelon people, and they really want to have a monopoly of force. And this comes from both the left and the right. And I am very suspicious of their motivations on why they don't want us to have firearms. And I think it's very similar to our statements about why government officials might want to ban body armor.
Mm-hmm. So I realize I'm fishing for praise here, but what did you think of my example of doing a squat as a way to teach proper posture?
Yeah, no, I saw that and I thought that was actually great. I actually might work that in as well, because that is good. Because I do tell people, get down into that gun, and that helps. I mean, I think about Melody Lauer is actually the one person I always think about. She's got her pistol stance. She gets real low in a lot of her stuff. Whenever I've seen her shooting on the firing line, like she really gets that gun out there and gets low down into it. And so I always tell people, don't be afraid to get behind the gun. I'm certainly aggressive on I get so aggravated whenever I see people doing the newbie lean, where the person is leaning backwards on the gun to cantilever that heavy pistol that's out in front of them. And so I very much am we're right off the bat, we are not going to be doing the newbie lean. You're going to be leaning forward. Yes, it's going to feel off balance while you're aiming the gun. Trust me, you'll thank me after that trigger breaks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably a better term than chick lean. I just use that because that's the first time I saw it used, and it was in, oh Lord, years and years ago, there was a webcomic called Failure to Fire.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I saw it. And so that was the first time it was named. And that's what it's always been to me in my head. But you're right. It should be more gender neutral. And it definitely, because a lot of people could interpret chick as being derogatory.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, newbie lean is so much better.
And certainly the biomechanics between a female body and a male body, there is a little bit more of if you've got a little bit less upper body strength, and, certainly how, how the body is built. I definitely do see it more in women than men, but that does not mean
so
that
hard not to,
go ahead.
You're trying so hard not to mention the existence of breasts. Weird.
Well,
it's really
I was
cute.
I'm absolutely thinking about them. I'm always thinking about them, but I'm certainly thinking about breasts. But I couldn't quite come up with any specific thing where they would be either a pro or a con towards the balance of a firearm. So I don't know. And actually, Aaron, you could probably actually speak the best on it, especially since yours are removable. So and they are realistically weighted.
Mm-hmm.
I think I told everyone about the time of we were checking into our Airbnb in Texas, and I accidentally elbowed you in the breast, and I just did the whole super this is just don't just be quiet about it and all of that, and just see she's not bothered by it. Okay, so we'll just pretend that didn't happen, and then I realized it's a prosthetic. It's fine, but yeah, but but very realistic. And so but yeah, does it feel considerably different on the firing line with breasts and without them?
It does, yes. Obviously, size and volume makes a difference. So if you are small-chested, you're less likely to have that problem. The other thing I've noticed is that the isosceles stance, which is the one that instructors try to get newbies to use the most, that's the one that's really awkward when it comes to breasts, because when your arms are going forward, to form that isosceles triangle, they're pressing in on the sides. And I have found that a Weaver stance, at least for me, is a lot easier in that regard. So that's just something to keep in your back pocket.
Oh, that's good to know. I mean, I personally prefer the Weaver stance myself, but also, yeah, I mean, one of the key things about the isosceles is, when your elbows are locked, your arms are going to be the exact same place. So it's a far more repeatable stance to have than Weaver, where you can really have that gun in a firing stance, but still very, very compressed close to your face, or you can have it almost all the way out. So that's, I think, why a lot of instructors avoid it, just because that isosceles is just everyone's isosceles stance is in exactly the same place. But yeah, that's a very, very interesting aspect. And yeah, I could see that. Yeah, the especially a very, very forward leaning pistol stance, you're pushing those breasts out ahead of your hips, and it's just going to throw the weight even further forward. And so yeah, mm-hmm. that's probably a big reason why it is called the chick lean. But as I was getting to the point of I have absolutely seen men do it as well. And certainly nobody, unless they're going to be instructed, or unless they're extremely intuitive on things, are going to be putting nearly enough weight forward when firing a pistol for the first time. So that that's always one of those things that I've always stress when teaching a new shooter is you're going to want to lean forward. It's going to feel weird and awkward as you're lining those sights up and squeezing that trigger. But trust me, when that gun goes off, you'll thank me.
And again, especially for women, getting the butt out in the squat position really helps to counterbalance.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're trying to lean forward, in an isosceles, you're trying not to do the newbie lean, but if you're well endowed, there will be issues. So if you get that sort of S shape of the squat, it really, really helps. It feels, I don't know if it really feels natural. It all feels really weirdly exaggerated to me, but I at least feel stable.
And after you've popped off a few rounds and you've controlled the recoil, and again, Lara mentioned it got a little hard to hear. She sometimes got off the mic a few times. I did my best to fix it as best as I could in post, but
actually, as someone who was there, it really wasn't her microphone. Discord was really acting up that day.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it also, I cleaned up a few artifacts where I think you were trying to talk and I was listening to your local recording and it sounded like they just couldn't hear you. So yeah, you were getting swallowed by Discord too.
Yeah, it's something that happens here on the podcast all the time. There's just enough of a lag that one of us thinks there is an opening and we start talking, and the other person didn't hear the opening and they're talking, and somebody tramples the other person.
Yeah, but it was hard to understand, but it sounds like the amazing newbie had been to the gun range before and had fired a pistol, and that was not a pleasant experience. And that's one thing that we always need to remember is that, you see the har videos and they disgust me of the little, skinny, clearly green shooter with a Desert Eagle and or a 500 Magnum or a 44 Magnum, and the gun just goes flying out of their hands and har. No, that's not the, oh, look at this dumb shooter. It's the, look at the idiot that put that person in that situation. They didn't know any better. And so, yeah, we need to make it a point that you work your way up into, better guns. And, it's not a particularly hard thing to do, because even a Glock 19 is a perfectly reasonable gun for a new shooter, or a 357 Magnum revolver loaded with 38 specials. That's light enough that it's not going to kick somebody around too much and going through. So you don't necessarily need a 22 in everything or anything like that, or a 223 rifle. That's a perfectly fine starting one, as long as you got good ear protection, because they're loud.
So I don't remember. It's been over a week since I talked to them. I don't remember if Mark said she had shot a Glock 45 or she had shot a Glock chambered in 45. I just know the number 45 and the word Glock was used. I've not shot a Glock 45 myself, but I have shot a Glock chambered in 45 ACP, and I found it highly unpleasant because the large caliber with the polymer frame, it beat my hand up. It didn't beat my hand up as some of the other Plastic Fantastics that I've shot. I've got, I think it's I'm not sure if it's a Ruger or it's a Smith & Wesson, but I have one in 380, and it's incredibly unpleasant to shoot. Every time I have let someone shoot it, they shoot one magazine and they go, okay, that's it, I'm done. As opposed to the Colt Mustang that I have, which is all metal, even if it's aluminum, and that's an absolute pleasure to shoot. So if she shot a Glock chambered in 45, she probably had that very unpleasant, there's too much recoil into the webbing of my hand, this hurts, I'm not having fun. Because she was about my height.
I kind of disagree with you. I actually find overall, actually polymer framed handguns actually are more pleasant for me to shoot than aluminum frame guns. I've got I've got a Smith & Wesson MMP 45, as do you, and I actually find that gun shoots far softer than my aluminum framed 1911. It's probably on par with my stainless steel. Oh my God, it's heavy 5-inch 1911. Just because that polymer has a little bit of flex to it, but That being said, if you've got small hands like you absolutely do, and I assume this new shooter also had hands on the smaller side, if she was shooting like a Glock 21.
Well, that's why I said she was about my height.
Yeah, the Glock 21 is just a boat anchor of a gun. It is gigantic. I mean, it's just so big, and you kind of get surprised as someone who's who's shot and carried 45s for the longest time. The first time I ever picked up a double stack 45, like it was just one of those like, oh, I didn't realize it was that big. You see the numbers, you see, oh, it doesn't weigh that much, or it even weighs less than government 1911. And oh, the barrel's 4.5 inches versus the 5 inches of a 1911, and all of that stuff. Oh, so it's really kind of just like the size of a 1911, give or take. It might be a little bit fatter, and then you pick it up and you're like, no, it's a lot fatter. And it's a lot of a bigger gun, and and especially on Glocks, they have chonky grips. And so I could see that if you can't get a really, really good purchase on that gun, the recoil is going to be far more punishing as well.
So yeah, I shot the same gun that she started off with, and I don't remember the model of it, but it was a just silky smooth 22 semi-auto, and it was just incredibly newbie friendly, and so pretty close to being the ideal starter gun. And as you heard towards the end, she was shooting black powder pirate guns and handguns, GONNE, and was literally having a blast. And so really the only way this could have been a better story would be if she had won the grand prize. But I don't know if she would have known what to do with all of it. Mm-hmm. But it was just really neat that after being made welcome and learning and having a good time, she came away with some swag.
By chance of the image I just threw up in chat ring a bell? Because I think I heard Laura mention this.
I think that was it. The reason I go I think is because the one you're showing is all black. Mm-hmm. And the one I shot was a lovely two-tone effect. What
were the colors?
I believe the slide was some degree of metallic blue, and the grip was a much lighter gray.
Oh, let's see. Well, I found this one's a little bit different. I mean, they make them in all colors, but
Ooh, I mean the slide isn't the right color, but the rest of it seems right.
Yeah, that's a Ruger SR22, and yeah, they are very, very nice. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Ruger firearms as a general rule, and those ones are nice. And again, it's just set up to be a nice 22 trainer. It's set up to be a gun to take to the range and teach new people and have it be inexpensive to shoot. So yeah, it's absolutely a great choice, and they don't cost a ton of money. So yeah, if you didn't need an excuse to buy a new gun, but if you don't have a nice little 22 trainer in your kit, go out and grab one. The new shooters in your life will thank you.
So I Googled Ruger SR22 blue, and I got this one, and I guess I flipped the colors in my mind, maybe? I don't know. I'm over the hill. My memory's crap.
Yeah,
but
and there's also like a million guns on the range that day, so the fact that you can...
Well, yeah, that's also true.
But, yeah. And I've seen like any number of other stuff that different slide colors as well. So like actually where was that one? I saw a very, very nice purple one. There it is. So yeah, if that exists, then what you're talking about could also exist as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Ruger SR22 with a slide. It's like a nice deep royal purple, paging Sean Sorrentino and Annette Evans.
Who I've also talked to.
Yes.
And we'll have my actual interview with her next week.
Yes, we will. And so, with that, let's let's get out of here. We've given them plenty of what they want. So thanks to each and every one of our listeners, and a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. To be our Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted podcast to sign up. You can get yourself an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like the hilarious blooper reels, the ACP film tracks, and the ACP mag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, the only platform where you can rate us. Subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I have a blog. It's called weerdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com. And you can also hear me on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network with the lovely Ryan Mached.
And you can get more from me at Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
Excuse me, waitress. I speak woman. Meanwhile, Weer'd is barely fluent in English. Our linguistic skills are assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Lady only speak two languages, English and Spanish.